On my birthday, Tina's first love came back. That night, she stayed over at Eric's place and didn't come home. You mean Ben? After Eric returned, he didn't care much. I let out a sarcastic laugh and turned around to accept someone else's confession. Later on, Tina regretted it. She knocked on my door late at night and was shocked when she saw the mark on my neck. Who gave you the guts to let someone else touch you? I sneered. Tina, haven't you had enough of playing the devoted lover? I have someone else now and you're just not enough anymore. The day Eric returned to the country was the same day as my birthday. Tina reserved a booth for me at a nearby bar to celebrate. After a few glasses, Eric suddenly pushed the door open. Dressed in a full Givenchy suit, he looked tall and handsome under the lights, drawing everyone's gaze. The noisy room went silent instantly. Someone recognized him, and in the next second, gossiping eyes turned to me. I calmly set down my glass without saying a word. Everyone there knew Tina and Eric dated back in college. After Eric went abroad for further studies, they naturally broke up. For him, Tina kept her distance from others for 2 years. Until she met me, she seemed like a different person. When she pursued me, it was beyond romantic. Everyone said Tina was crazy in love with me. But we were together for 3 years and I never heard her talk about marriage. The room was quiet. Tina lounged lazily on the couch. She glanced at Eric, then quickly looked away. Only I knew. At the sight of Eric, Tina's breath hitched. Leo, sensing the tension, awkwardly laughed and stood up, asking Eric, why don't you come in first? Eric hesitated a bit, glancing at Tina with wide eyes. Tina, he was cut off by Tina's angry shout before he could finish. Her voice was so loud, it startled even me. Leo rubbed the back of his head. Tina, Eric just got back, and he asked for my location right after landing. I didn't think much and gave him the address. Her expression turned apologetic as she looked at me. Sorry about this. I didn't know he would come over. Eric's face paled, and after Leo called me brother-in-law, he looked even worse. The next second, he explained, Tina, I just wanted to see you since I just got back. That's all. Since you're busy, I won't disturb you. He forced a smile, glanced at Tina once more, and left without any response from her. He looked disappointed. As soon as Eric walked out, the lively atmosphere returned. Tina seemed unaffected, holding my hand. Leo doesn't think much before acting. Don't mind him. I smiled, staying silent. Then she picked up her drink, her eyes occasionally darting to the door. Nails dug into my palm, but I couldn't feel the pain. Suddenly, a loud phone ring broke the chatter. It was Tina's phone, showing an unknown number. Her eyebrows furrowed. She answered. Despite the noise, I could hear a low male voice on the other end clearly. Tina, I just stepped out of the bar but bumped into some trouble. Can you come? The voice was soft and helpless. It was clearly Eric. I glanced at Tina and saw her fingers tense. What can I do? Why don't you call the cops? With that, she hung up swiftly. She took a deep breath and gulped down a few drinks. Time ticked by and she sat there, like she was proving she could let go. In no more than 10 minutes, Tina finished half a bottle. I knew it meant she was anxious. Suddenly, she put down her glass, grabbed her bag, and apologized. Ben, I forgot I have some work to finish at the office. I'll leave my car here. Let him drive you home later. I swallowed the sour feeling. As Tina turned to leave, I stopped her. Are you coming home tonight? Without hesitation, she replied, I will. Wait for me, okay? This time, I didn't say a word, just nodded quietly. That night, of course, Tina didn't come back. I knew all too well because of the way Eric looked at her. When old flames reunite, what woman can resist? Couldn't sleep. The next morning, as I was leaving after getting dressed, I found Tina on the balcony talking on the phone. She was still in the trench coat from last night, now with some crumpled hems. Linda, don't tell anyone yet about me sleeping with Eric. I'll handle it. Ben, you say? He hasn't touched me for years. It's dull and pointless. Have you ever seen someone date for 3 years without getting intimate? Now that Eric's back, Ben isn't enough anymore. Standing behind her, My heart grew colder. Even though I was prepared from last night, her words still hurt to hear. When she hung up, she was startled to see me. Looking a bit flustered, she asked, "How long have you been standing there?" I laughed coldly, tugging at the corner of my lips. In that moment, the woman before me made my skin crawl. "Now that Eric's back, I'm not enough." "Huh?" That's what I said. Tina frowned and hurriedly stepped up to me, as if she made up her mind. "Ben, don't be difficult, okay? Since you overheard, let's just talk it out." I looked her in the eyes. "All right, go ahead. I admit I've always been in love with Eric, or maybe I just never got over him. Ever since he came back to the country, I felt like my heart, which was lost, started beating again. I've never felt this way during all those years with you. I need to keep the promise I made to Eric. As for us, Ben, it's best we part on good terms." I didn't say anything, just realizing how ridiculous these last 3 years have been. Last night, for a moment, I thought about calling her. "Tina, what do you see me as? These 3 years, were they all lies?" But now I suddenly don't feel like asking. Even sharing the same space with her feels dirty. As I turned to leave, I said, "Okay, let's break up." Since she made it clear, I wasn't about to cling to her. I efficiently went back to my room to pack. As I dragged my luggage downstairs, Tina was standing in the living room. Her face was cold, clearly still unhappy. "Ben, do you really have to leave right now? You know how hard it is to find a place these days. You could easily stay until you find a new apartment." "I, Tina, am not that incapable of accommodating you." I chuckled. "Sorry, I can't stand it." As I walked out of the community, I called a cab. After smoothly giving Mike's address, I stared absent-mindedly at the scenery passing by outside. Mike and I grew up together, we're tight. In the living room, he was righteously indignant for me, his face flushed with anger. Just now, he grabbed a kitchen knife, ready to head out and get justice for me. I quickly stopped him. My efforts over these 3 years aren't something Tina could ever repay. Since we're breaking up, let's keep it simple and mutual. I don't want the name Tina to show up in my life anymore. I've got my own plans for the future. I want to set up a book cafe, do some small business. Mike nodded, showing he was satisfied with my decision. Good thing you're clear-headed. You haven't gotten much from being with Tina these years. You've always focused on your career. We can still stand tall without women, Ben. I believe in you. For now, just stay at my place. I know some real estate agents who can help keep an eye out for locations. I smiled and patted Mike on the shoulder. Thanks for the help. Though there's no rush. I want to travel abroad for a bit to clear my mind. Mike gave me a knowing nod. If I weren't tied up with work, I'd go with you. Heard there are plenty of beautiful women abroad. Wish you some luck with that. Catching Mike's teasing look, I chuckled. I'll take that wish. I booked a vacation on an island. It's always sunny here with clear waters. Since arriving, I've been extra sleepy, often sleeping in the hotel until late morning. After ordering a meal, I spent the afternoon snoozing on a beach chair. Towards evening, I put on a casual shirt and headed out. I heard from tourists there's a nice bar nearby. Sitting at the bar, I asked the bartender for a glass of whiskey. In a crystal clear glass was amber liquid. I tilted my head back and downed it. The bartender was an authentic Chinese guy. He raised an eyebrow and looked at me, then smiled and shook his head. His hands skillfully shook the cocktail shaker, pouring ice blue liquid into a glass. Adding a sprig of mint to the rim, he smiled and slid the drink over. "Try this, you'll like it." I curved my lips into a smile, not refusing. At the first sip, I glanced up at the bartender. The taste was indeed refreshing, surprising me. Nearby, there were occasional attempts to chat, which I swiftly dismissed. The bartender shrugged. "Dude, I bet you have a lot of admirers back in China." "Oh? Why's that?" "That's the 4th young girl who's tried to talk to you." I laughed without replying. "Is that so? But in some people's eyes, I'm worthless." In the private room, Eric placed a kiss on Tina's lips, then reluctantly stood to head to the restroom. Tina sat on the couch, flipping through her phone. Seeing no new messages, she irritably shut it off. A whole week. An entire week. Ben hadn't contacted her or appeared in her world. This outcome annoyed Tina greatly. She asked with a dark expression, "Leo, has that person contacted you?" Leo turned. "Tina, who are you talking about?" Tina clicked her tongue helplessly but patiently said, "Ben, has he contacted you?" Leo seemed to suddenly realize and replied, "I called him this morning, but he didn't pick up. Plus, his number shows he's abroad now." "Abroad?" Tina's brow twitched intensely. Leo gave Tina a meaningful look. "Tina, if you care so much about Ben, why not just give him a call yourself? Men need to be coaxed. Sometimes you shouldn't act so high and mighty." Hearing this, Tina looked like she swallowed a whole bucket of explosives. "Who says I care about him? It's a joke. Let him go if he's going. Where can he go as a man? Once he's tired of wandering, won't he just come back to me? Forget him, let's drink." Leo looked at Tina with a hint of helplessness but swallowed back what he was going to say. In the bar, Linda had originally been discussing a project with a client. The man across from her tapped his index finger on the table and squinted, smiling. "Linda, it's the first time I've seen you look at a guy so often." Linda snapped out of it and sheepishly smiled. "Did I?" The client, in a business suit, laughed and pointed towards the black silhouette by the bar. "Yeah, since just now, you've glanced at him at least 10 times. You have good taste. Since work's all discussed, why don't I take my leave?" Linda paused for a moment, then smiled again. "All right, I won't refuse. Thanks for everything. I'll treat you to dinner another time." The client gave a knowing smile, picked up their bag, and gracefully left the bar. I took the last sip of my drink by the counter when my phone went off. It was Mike asking how things were going abroad. I quickly replied with flying fingers, "Everything's good, don't worry." I looked up to find the bartender's eyes had been on me. He smiled and said, "Hey, here's your 5th admirer of the night." I turned my head, propping my chin casually on my hand against the bar. I smelled the alcohol on myself and winced. The person who approached was slim and quite attractive. As luck would have it, I actually knew her. She was my junior during college, Linda. "What a coincidence running into you here," Linda said with a smile that felt like a fresh breeze. I stood up, reaching out to shake her hand, but I lost my balance and fell straight towards her. Thankfully, Linda caught me, holding me in her arms. "Are you alone? How come you drank so much?" I didn't say anything, just gave her a silly smile. Linda sighed as if she was used to this. "I'll take you back. Which hotel are you staying at?" It took a bit, but I finally managed to tell her the hotel's full name. Once we got there, Linda got a room next to mine just to be safe. In the elevator, I felt most of the alcohol's effect wearing off. Linda smelled of roses, and I found myself leaning closer. She opened my room and sat me on the couch. "Got it from here?" I nodded without saying a word. She knelt, her gaze gentle. "Ben, I'm staying just next to you. If you need anything, just knock." As she turned to leave, I tugged at her jacket. Linda looked back at me, just as warm as ever. "What's up?" "Linda, have you ever had a boyfriend?" She paused, seemingly surprised at my question. "No, why not?" I recalled when she confessed to me back in college and looked up at her. "Back then, you said you'd wait for me. Were you serious about liking me?" Linda's lashes trembled. "I've never stopped." With those words, she hurriedly turned away, realizing she might have said too much. Her face flushed to her ears. I pulled her to me, pinning her against the wall. She seemed quite at a loss facing a drunken me. She whispered, "Ben, you." The tension between us crackled like a spark. I saw the desire in Linda's eyes. I chuckled, feeling a pang in my chest. Someone once told me I'm dull, utterly boring. As a woman, do you think the same? Linda just watched me silently. After a while, she touched the back of my head. "No, you're irresistibly attractive to me." "Really? I'd like to see." Linda opened her mouth to speak, but I kissed her hard. None of it seemed to matter anymore. I used to think marrying Tina would make things fall into place. Now I knew I was wrong. From the moment Linda appeared, I suddenly felt drawn to her. It was what I'd call a hormonal attraction, a physical pull. Linda hesitated at first, but my boldness overwhelmed her. Just as I thought she'd go further, Linda caught my hand. Ben, you're not thinking straight. How about we just sleep tonight? Okay? I pouted. Liar. She said I was irresistible, and yet she held back at this point. Liar. All women are big liars. I threw a drunken tantrum all night. Linda was too occupied taking care of me to rest, wrapping me in blankets and soothing me until I slept. Because of my spectacle, I woke up with a sore throat the next morning. After freshening up, Linda handed me a bottle of water from where she sat on the couch. I downed several gulps before the awkwardness set in. About last night, I'm really sorry. Linda's gaze deepened. Do you always cause such a scene when you're drunk? If you hadn't run into me last night, who knows what could have happened? You should probably stay away from bars. Linda's stern warning sent a shiver through me. I blurted out without thinking. Linda, last night when I was out of it, are you not up for it? The air froze instantly at my comment. Linda's face turned red, but her eyes were filled with longing. She leaned closer, gently pushing me back onto the couch. I didn't speak. My mouth was suddenly dry, and I unintentionally licked my lips. It seemed to provoke Linda. She leaned in and kissed me. Ben, there's no going back now. And so we spent the morning tangled together. Linda and I ended up sleeping through to the afternoon. I was about to get up and freshen up when Linda held me from behind. Where are you off to? She asked. I was about to respond when she continued, Ben, let's talk. In the living room, I sat on the couch across from Linda. With her arms crossed, she looked at me. Sleepy beauty radiated from her, strikingly captivating. Ben, back in college, I confessed to you. You said you had a girlfriend. But now you've broken up with Tina, haven't you? This isn't a question. It's something I'm absolutely sure about. I know I must have told Linda all about Tina's crappy behavior last night, probably even cursed all night long. And Linda listened to it all. With her intense gaze on me, I nodded. Linda, Tina and I broke up, but I'm still all over the place right now. Linda cut me off. You want time to sort things out, and I'll give you that. But are you really going to deny what you feel for me? She hit the nail on the head. Seeing Linda's slightly red eyes, I was speechless. I'll admit it, from the moment I saw Linda last night, I was hooked. After a while, she sighed and came over, squatting down in front of me. She looked at me, eyes more determined than ever. Ben, I'm a stubborn person. Once I set my sights on someone, it's hard to like anyone else. Ever since college, you were the only one I saw. I thought I'd be single forever. If I had known Tina was so fickle, I would never have stepped aside for her. Her voice tightened a bit. Maybe you've never experienced the torment of unrequited love. It's like an addiction that tortures yet delights me. Even after I started my own company after graduation, I hope to be in the same city as you. Just knowing we're breathing the same air makes me happy. So when I saw you again last night, I couldn't help but want to be near you, even if you might end up hating me. Look, I'm not Tina. She could throw you away like you meant nothing. But to me, you've always been the treasure I longed for but couldn't have. Linda choked up. Her beautiful eyes were filled with me. Her overwhelming love left me at a loss for words. As if worried I'd reject her, Linda looked at me cautiously. So, can you please stop pushing me away? At least, don't hate me. I'm begging you. Feeling her fingers tremble, I just felt a twinge in my nose. Linda, I never hated you. When you confessed to me back then, I always thought you were joking. You were so dazzling in college, with tons of guys after you. And I was just a regular guy, always avoiding things. I never thought you really liked me. Finishing, I kissed Linda's forehead. Being loved doesn't need a reason. I like you. Her eyelashes fluttered. The atmosphere was warm. Linda tentatively leaned in, gently kissing my lips. Feeling her move first, I let out a muffled sound and deepened the kiss. After a while, I held her tightly by the neck. Linda, this time you won't be rejected. I won't leave you again. Once everything here was wrapped up, Linda and I headed back together. I initially wanted to get things sorted with the book cafe first. Mike already found me a shop, and it was within budget. But Linda is clingy and doesn't want to be apart even for a moment. So our return was a bit delayed. When Mike picked me up at the airport, he couldn't hide his smile. While Linda grabbed our baggage, Mike pulled me aside. Went abroad and ended up with a catch like that. Ben, you're something, man. This was fast. I glanced over at Linda, pursed my lips. Didn't meet her abroad. She went after me back in college. Mike smacked his forehead like he just got it. That's why she looks so familiar. Wasn't she the one who confessed to you back then? Linda. We said it almost in unison. He smirked. So she still hung up on you, huh? Even after all this time, she's taken with you. Our first dinner back home, the three of us ate together. Seeing her so gentle and kind, with all her attention on me, Mike was totally relieved. After dropping us off at Mike's place, he made an excuse and was gone in a flash. In the car, Linda held me tightly, reluctant to let go. Really can't stay at my place? I chuckled, patting her shoulder. The book cafe is about to open. I've got loads to do. I might be busy for a while, but once things settle, it'll be fine. Linda didn't say much, just gently brushed my bangs aside. Okay, then I'll come help every day. Her playful nature amused me. She held my hand, sharing her warmth. Don't want my investment in the book cafe? Still consider me an outsider? Ben, you're making me feel insecure. I smiled at her. It's not that, I've got enough funds right now. Linda, you should focus on your work. I'm counting on you to support me in the future. I cheekily stuck out my tongue, making Linda laugh. She kissed my lips. With the way your girl is doing, supporting 10 of you wouldn't be a problem. Oh really? Guess I've landed myself a boss lady. Then, in the car, Linda and I bantered back and forth, laughter filling the space. Thanks to Linda and Mike's help, the book cafe was up and running smoothly in less than 2 months. I hired a few sweet, gentle girls to manage the shop. The third floor of the cafe is my place. Linda often stays over, so she designed the whole thing. She's already shameless, and now she just comes straight over after work, claiming living together is great for our relationship. Seeing her act all pitiful as if I'd kick her out, I go along with it. Around 10 at night, after showering, I found Linda video chatting with her parents in Poland. She glanced at me, her gaze a little deeper. Mom, you haven't met Ben yet, have you? He's right here with me now. Before I could react, Linda pulled me to her side. Why didn't you say so earlier? Seeing my face filled with panic, Linda's smile deepened. Relax, my parents will definitely like you. She held my hand tightly, introducing me naturally to her parents. Linda's parents seemed really nice. I kind of expected it since Linda has such a good temper. I always guessed she grew up in a loving family. By the end of our chat, they even reminded Linda to bring me to Poland sometime so her folks could meet their future son-in-law. I was so embarrassed by being called son-in-law that I hurried back to the room. On the couch, Linda smiled dotingly. All right, don't scare my husband. She's thin-skinned. When Linda hung up the phone, I was playing with the ragdoll cat she gave me. She stood leaning against the door frame, a smile playing on her lips. I gave her an annoyed look. You shouldn't act so casually in front of your folks. If you're not shy, I am. Linda chuckled, walking towards me. Quick as a flash, she scooped the cat from my arms and shut it out of the room despite its plaintive look. My folks aren't old-fashioned. Don't worry about it. I remember when I was little, they often went on dates, leaving me home alone. I burst into laughter. Really? Your parents were that adorable when they were young? Linda came over and sat beside me. Yeah, so I grew up watching how my dad loved my mom. Naturally, I learned to love you without being taught. You're so full of yourself, I said with a smile, leaning in to kiss Linda. There's a saying about tit for tat. The best way to deal with someone like Linda is to shut her up with a kiss. She seemed to enjoy my affection, warmly returning my kiss. I chuckled, pinning her beneath me. Feeling so bold tonight? I grinned, starting to unbutton her shirt. The atmosphere was heating up. A hint of affection flickered in her eyes as she grabbed my hand. How about we go to Poland for New Year's and meet my parents? I don't want to wait any longer. I want to marry you. She looked at me eagerly, almost holding her breath in fear of a rejection. After a while, I wrapped my arms around her waist and laughed in response. Okay. Suddenly, Linda's eyes filled with tears. She kissed me tenderly. Since you said yes, you're mine forever. Don't ever leave me. Deep into the night, we were tangled up together in the room. Eventually, Linda lay in my arms. She pulled out a ring from who knows where and slipped it onto my finger. Surprised, I watched as Linda kissed my forehead. I bought this a few days ago, waiting for the right moment to give it to you. Tonight seemed perfect. I raised my hand, admiring the ring. Linda looked at it and softly said, "From today, I have a fiancé too." Suddenly, tears welled up in her eyes. I was flustered by her tears, spending ages comforting her with kisses and hugs. "Silly, we're going to be even happier together. What are you crying for?" Linda nodded, curling up in my embrace. "I know, Ben. Thank you, and I love you." Outside, at 11, a black Range Rover was parked in front of the bookstore cafe. Tina had been sitting inside for quite a while. She stared at the lights from the third-floor window, feeling a sudden pang of fear. After breaking up with Ben, she'd finally gotten with Eric, the man she'd always loved. She thought she'd made up for her first love. But in her heart, she kept thinking about Ben. She missed how good he was to her, his smile, his tears. Even with Eric, Tina often drifted off into thought. At first, she could lie to herself, saying she wasn't used to it yet. After all, she'd been with Ben for 3 years, and habits die hard. But eventually, that intense longing forced Tina to realize that she loved Ben. The thought clawed at her insides. She never realized Ben had already taken up residence in her heart. It was ridiculous that she never knew this, even breaking things off so coldly just a day after his birthday. The more she thought about it, the worse she felt. She asked around everywhere to find out about Ben's whereabouts, finally discovering he had opened a cafe here. Tonight, for the first time, she lied to Eric about having work and drove over. During the hour she'd sat downstairs, she'd thought a lot. Finally, she decided to gather the courage to fight for him again. Even if he cursed her, even if he hit her, she'd take it. All she wanted was for him to come back to her. She'd do whatever it took. Upstairs, I was holding Linda, telling her stories from my childhood. She listened eagerly. Eventually, she wrapped her arms around me with regret, wishing she had met me sooner. Then suddenly, the cafe's doorbell rang, piercing through the quiet of the night. Linda blinked in surprise. Who would come this late? She was about to get up, but I stopped her. "I'll go." Slipping on my slippers, I headed downstairs. I opened the door to find a worn-looking Tina standing there. In just a few months, she looked more haggard than before. "Ben, you win. Every time we fought, it was you who reached out first. This time, can I be the one to lose?" Before she finished speaking, I snorted softly. She raised her eyes to mine, panic setting in when she saw the mark on my collarbone. She rushed forward, gripping my shoulders, her lips starting to tremble uncontrollably. "Who did you let touch you? Huh? Who do you think you are letting someone else touch you? Ben, answer me." I watched Tina go crazy in front of me with a cold eye. Seeing her like this, I chuckled softly. "Tina, you're forgetful. Remember how things were with us. Let me remind you, we broke up. So, does it matter to you who I'm with now?" As soon as I finished, Tina's hand fell weakly. She laughed at herself and tried to touch my face, but I dodged it without hesitation. Tina stood awkwardly, her expression full of pain. "I know, it was my mistake back then. I was out of my mind and broke up with you. But Ben, I regret it now. I can't live without you. I could break up with Eric and we can start over. Okay?" I looked at Tina. She's the same as before, hasn't changed a bit. But now I'm too tired to even pretend to care. "Tina, have you played the deep love drama enough? You want to start over, but I don't. You should go. I've moved on and you just don't measure up anymore." I threw back the same words Tina once said to me without any hesitation. When I finished, Tina shook her head, trembling. She looked at me incredulously. "You're lying. I don't believe anyone could love you more than I do. You've been with me for 3 years. Who would dare take you away without my say-so?" Before I could respond, I heard Linda's lazy voice from behind me. "Really? Tina seems quite overconfident." "Huh?" I turned around to see Linda walking over. When she reached me, she gently wrapped her arm around my waist. Let me handle this, you go on upstairs. I nodded. Just as I was about to leave, Linda suddenly pulled me back. Before I could react, she kissed me right in front of Tina, passionately. Finally, she let me go. Linda's eyes were filled with warmth. I've drawn a bath for you. Go take a soak. Okay? Thinking about her earlier affection, I quickly nodded and headed upstairs. At the door, the two women were in a standoff. Tina clenched her fists, her face looking especially frightening. What gives you the right to have him? I love him, respect him, and honor him. And how long have you been with him? Can you compare that to my 3 years with Ben? Tina was relentless, as if she wanted to tear apart the woman in front of her. Seeing this, Linda's gaze was firm. How do you know how long I've loved him? To be honest, since you started dating him, I've been loving him in silence. It's not necessary for me to tell you how much pain he endured because of you, right? Since you didn't cherish him well, it's better to let someone who truly deserves him love him. Plus, he's my fiancé now, and we're about to get married soon. Please stop disturbing our lives. The word married hit Tina like a stab. She could no longer accept reality, facing this strong presence. She was taken aback. Today, when Tina saw the loving gaze in Ben's eyes, she almost lost her soul. She knew well, it was another's love that caused this change in him. Even if Tina didn't want to admit it, she had to. As a woman, she admitted defeat to the one standing before her. After a while, Tina looked at Linda, her eyes suddenly turning red. It was the first time she humbled herself so much for Ben. You guys haven't been together long. Your relationship isn't as deep as ours. If you don't absolutely need him, could you let him come back to me? Linda chuckled softly at this. It almost seemed like she was laughing at Tina's overconfidence. The next second, she suddenly became serious, staring firmly at Tina. How do you know I don't absolutely need him? Who could love him more than I do? Can you, Tina? The air froze immediately. Tina stared hard at Linda, as if searching for any flaw on her face. Finally, she gave up the fight. Just as Linda was closing the door, Tina suddenly stopped her. I'm sorry. Linda's expression dimmed. You should apologize to him, not me. The night Ben got drunk, he spoke a lot to her, pouring his heart out. Linda felt his pain. But where was Tina when he needed a shoulder the most? Perhaps she was lost in the charms of another, forgetting all about Ben. Such a person does not deserve forgiveness. Yet, she owed Tina some gratitude. If it weren't for her indecisiveness back then, maybe Linda would never have the chance to be with Ben. Time flies, and the city had its first snowfall of the year. These days, Linda has been extra kind to me. Maybe Tina showing up last time stirred something in her, making Linda incredibly jealous. She determined to spoil me so much that I can't ever leave her. I'm quite satisfied with Linda's sense of possession. At 8 p.m., I left the mall. Tonight, Mike treated me to dinner. He's been hitting it off with a young girl from his office. Said it was dinner, but really, he wanted me to meet his girlfriend and get my take on her. We laughed and talked for nearly 2 hours before parting ways. As I headed back, Linda's message came through. Are you done? I just finished work. Coming to pick you up. I chuckled, replying quickly. No need, I'm almost there. Just wait for me at home. I slipped my phone into my pocket and headed toward the book cafe. It's just a 10-minute walk from here. Not far. Less people were walking around that early winter evening. I quietly walked along, not aware that the crowd had thinned. As I turned the corner, a white car suddenly sped towards me. It was coming fast, too fast for me to react in time. Suddenly, I heard a shocking cry. Watch out. The next second, I was pulled into a familiar embrace. Linda looked at me with worry, her eyebrows furrowed deeply. Ben, are you hurt anywhere? She anxiously checked me all over. I was stunned, just staring blankly as the white car sped off. After a moment, I slowly shook my head. I'm fine. Don't worry. Linda finally let out a sigh of relief, pulling me into her arms. Good thing I wasn't at ease and came out to find you. If I hadn't been here just now, I can't imagine what could have happened. I was scared too, but I still patted Linda's back reassuringly. It was just an accident, no big deal. Linda turned her head, glancing at where the car had gone. Her face darkened. Really? Just an accident? That night, despite my objections, Linda insisted on taking me home. At the bookstore cafe, she checked me all over carefully. I was so embarrassed I didn't know where to look, finally making her breathe easy. Why so shy? I've seen every part of you before. Ben, promise me you'll be careful when you go out from now on. Especially at night. I'll come get you no matter how busy I am. Don't run around alone. Got it? Seeing how stressed she was, I nodded. I thought that would be the end of it. Turns out, Linda kept it on her mind. A few days later, the investigation Linda set up had some progress. They found the surveillance footage of where I was almost hit. The driver of that white car was Eric. I could hardly believe it. I had no grudge against Eric. Why would he try to harm me? Linda paused, but then she told me the truth. I heard Tina broke up with him a while ago, and he's been in a bad state. After leaving his job, he started secretly following you. Hearing this, I only felt a chill down my spine. Being stalked like this, I had no clue this whole time. Tina broke up with him. Why would he hate me? Linda pressed her lips together, pulling me into her lap. What do you think? He must know Tina came to get back together with you recently. I heard their breakup was ugly. Eric was hysterically begging her not to leave, but it didn't work. So, I guess he blamed it all on you. I sighed, feeling complicated. In a way, Eric was a pitiful guy too. Old flames reigniting, you'd think life would be blissful. But Tina's still mentally a kid, betraying his genuine feelings. Eric must have been tormented, full of resentment, hence such an extreme path. I hugged Linda. Don't worry, I've already reported it. Eric will get the punishment he deserves. Linda nodded silently. At the start of the year, Linda took me to Poland to meet her parents. We met the parents officially. As spring arrived, our wedding was being planned. On our wedding day, Tina sent a big red envelope via Leo. Linda knew about it but said nothing. I looked at Leo and gently said, Tina is welcome to the wedding if she wants. After a pause, Leo's voice was choked. Tina can't make it. She was diagnosed with stomach cancer before the new year, and chemo's been rough on her. She wanted me to pass on her congratulations to you today. Tina asked me to tell you don't hold a grudge. She's got her comeuppance. I was shocked. Linda and I exchanged a glance, finally sighing. Leo tried to smile. Ben, sorry for bringing such bad news to your wedding. I shook my head, showing him it's all right. He looked at me, her thoughts delivered. I'll take off now. Congratulations on the wedding, and may you have kids soon. After that, Leo nodded at Linda. Linda said nothing but patted Leo's shoulder. In the end, I didn't accept the red envelope from Tina. I stuffed it back in Leo's pocket as he left. She doesn't know me, we've long settled it. I have my life to live, we all have to look forward. I don't hate her, I found my own peace. Go tell Tina to focus on recovery. Winter will pass. Leo wiped his tears and left. Beside me, Linda comfortingly held my hand. Yeah, winter does end, doesn't it? Get through this cold and spring arrives. Linda intertwined her fingers with mine. We accepted the blessings from friends and family. Not only celebrating getting through tough times, but also celebrating Linda's persistent heart finally finding happiness. At the wedding, Linda's mom laughed and cried. I'm surrounded by kind, genuine people. Because of Linda, I've become better. She stood beside me, and I felt her excitement. Ben, thank you for marrying me. I promise you everything I can, loving you with all my life. I turned to look at her. Linda's eyes were filled with warmth and deep affection. Finally, I smiled and kissed her. Linda, I've given myself to you. Let's take care of each other for the rest of our lives. There's nothing to brag about. What she gives me, she's given to no one else. Time is gentle and we've got a long journey ahead.